All right, so I wanted to give you a look at some of the rock work that I am doing for the orc board cliff. Now, obviously, I'm not showing you the entire cliff here, and you will see it at a later date, but I thought while I'm working on it, I wanted to capture some of that and show you exactly how I'm doing some of the rubble at the base of the cliff. And normally I would refer to this as talus, but it's so large and chunky, I don't know if that could be called talus. What I'm using are plaster casts from the same mold that I have used to make the resin rock face, and these are from the molds that I created back when I was doing the islands on the ocean project. So if you want to see more about these molds, you can go back. There's the back finger, just in audio form, in my playlist, and you could see I talk extensively about the molds at that point, as well as some product reviews. In any case, I am what I did is I made some casts of the rock face in plaster so that I could break them up into pieces, and that way it would be easier to work with and I could get a variety of sizes. And I'm using Sculpt-A-Mold. That's that little pile of goop in front of my hands there, and that is a sort of a paper mache type material, and I've mentioned Sculpt-A-Mold in some previous videos as well, and it's a wonderfully versatile material. So what I've done is I'm using the Sculpt-A-Mold as the sort of glue, if you will, for the plaster pieces, and I just put a little dab on the bottom there, and then I press it into place. And oftentimes I found that I needed to go back and add some more into some of the voids that are, too large in between some of the blocks. Speaking of the voids, one of the things that I really felt was important for these pieces was to have negative space between them. My vision is to have, is seeing large chunks of rocks falling off from the cliff face, not necessarily coming off in little bits and pieces, but big cleaving pieces falling off the rock face. Something a little different than what I've done before, but I think matches the sort of faceted look of the rock face. And these are actually, I showed the rock face also in the giveaway as one of the prizes, so you could go check that out there if you want to see them in full detail, but you will see them shortly once I get the board a little more finished. When I had the little platform, which is the bottom of the elevator out, it's because, and you can see in the wax paper there, I have the word winch written down. I really need to take into account the elements that are going onto the board, because I've really made it tight for fitting them in, and so I'm being very careful to not push too far out with the rubble into those areas so that I can put those elements where I need them to be. Where I had a little more space, I actually, and I don't know if it's going to show up late in this video, but I went back over some of the places where I have space, and I actually piled up the rock chunks a little bit higher and a little bit further out, since I had the space to do that. Now, if you may have noticed, as I'm working across, I'm placing them on plaster bandages that I've used to create a foundation against the rock facing. The reason that I'm using the plaster bandages as well as the wax paper that you see is that the cave for this, which I think you'll see towards the end of this, I have to lift up the entire plateau here and flip it upside down to get at the cave to paint it. And I want to paint the cave and the rock faces all at once. That's going to be the easiest way to ensure that they match, although I might change the color in the cave a little bit, but it's going to be easy to blend it and control that better if I do them all at once. So I am creating the piles as attached to the rock face, and then I can flip the whole thing over, and the plaster bandages help give a foundation to that. And actually, when I started on this part of the project. I've flipped it over several times, and the plaster bandages are holding it quite well. So the plaster bandages, and you can see them along the top of the cliff face as well, and those are, if you are familiar with plaster bandages, company like Woodland Scenics will sell some for modeling, but I purchased these online on Amazon for a much cheaper price and for a better quality of plaster bandage. The higher quality plaster bandages were recommended in some resource that I looked at. Excuse me. Some resources that I had looked at in the past, and I can't remember where. And I really think choosing a higher quality, that's me vaping a little bit. So my e-cig is often my partner while I work. High quality plaster bandages make a difference, and I would recommend them. So I've used them along the top to bridge the gap between the casts and the foam, and the same is true of the bottom. There's some large gaps between the rock face and the foam. So I've folded up so I flipped everything upside down, and then I folded up the wet plaster bandages, stuffed them into the gap, and then and flipped it over, and then straightened them all out. That was a little bit of a trick, because you have to do it before the plaster bandages start to harden, and they start to harden fairly quickly. So I learned that rather than try to do a huge stretch, I would do a section at a time, and basically did it in, I think, 3 sections to complete the entire wraparound. I won't kid you, this took several hours to do, because each piece that you see was not only individually hand placed with a bit of an eye to what fits well and sits well and looks natural, but each of these pieces has also been broken off from larger cast pieces and individually chipped and sanded and adjusted, and some holes in the cast cleaned up, so that I could put them down exactly where I wanted and have them fit. But I really think that the time that I spent on it really shows. I'm very, very excited about how those rock pieces are coming out, and after this, I will go over it with some loose, fine gravel. Not too much, because I want to keep the large chunks and, like I said, the negative voids. When these big pieces fall, they pile onto each other and they create gaps, in between the pieces, and so I don't want to necessarily fill those all up, but of course I need some smaller pieces to bridge the scale and represent little pieces that would have broken off. Other small bits do fall off, and really this isn't, I don't think, geologically entirely accurate, but it looks nice and it works well considering the space limitations that I have on the board. And like I said, next update, probably you will get to see the board in general as a big layout and get a sense of exactly how long this is. But the rock face is a little over. It's probably 55 inches in length, because the board is 44 inches across, and the rock face does quite a bit of curving along the way. What I've been working on lately is the cave, and that has been a little bit more of a challenge. Actually, the cave has presented some of the biggest challenges for this process, much more so than I expected, partly because it is descending into the foam. I don't think you'll be able to see that in this video, but pretty soon we should be able to see the cave, I think. And because it recesses getting the plaster bandages in there, and then adding some rock fall around it will be, it's a little bit more challenging. And the cave had to end up being much, much larger because the Arachnarock model is much larger than I initially anticipated. Oh, and there you can see a little bit of the entrance of the cave off to the side, and it's quite big. And I'm not going to finish all of this work in this video, but I wanted to give you a prolonged look at the process so you can see the size of the bits of rock that I'm adding, and some of the technique that I used. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and hopefully you'll stay tuned to the channel, because there will be more videos on this project as time goes on. So stay tuned, and you know that I will be back soon with another Terranscapes video.